I am Laurel Bill, author of the Aunt Phil's Trunk Alaska History Series, which I talked about a little bit this morning. My aunt, who graces the cover of my series on Alaska, was one of Alaska's most respected historians. She was moved to Cordova, Alaska when she was 5 years old. My grandfather helped build the Copper River Railroad to the Kennecott copper mines. She became one of Alaska's leading historians, and she wrote articles for like the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, San Francisco Chronicle, the Alaska Sportsman, which is now the Alaska Magazine. Aunt Phyllis won national awards for her writing. So when she died in 1993, I inherited her entire body of work because no one else knew what to do with it. I was in remote Alaska, a little village called King Salmon, for 25 years. When I moved into Anchorage and saw what my aunt had done, I told my husband his plans for us just to go golfing the rest of our lives was going to be altered slightly because I had to do something with it. So I went back to college, University of Alaska, Anchorage. 10 years ago, got my degree in journalism with a minor in history just so I could do this. So my goal was to write Alaska's history in an entertaining way where you would want to turn the pages and see what happens next kind of writing, not like a textbook, and also visually, because today, as we all know here, visual is king. So I went through thousands of photographs at museums and libraries and chose close to 350 historical photographs for each and every book. In fact, I have close to $32,000 in photo rights tied up in 4 volumes because none of the institutions said, sure, we'll let you use our photos. Oh, no, no, no. In fact, my least expensive was $5 from the library in Seward, Alaska for use of their photos, to the most expensive one, which was of Klondike Kate. I'll show you a little later. She was a belle called the Flame of the Yukon who came north, and she plied the dance floor with her moves and got lots of money from the miners. She was very good at mining the miners for their gold dust. But she was a very curvy woman with a mature figure like several of us, and I thought, I paid $250 to use that photo because I wanted you all to know real women have figures. That was my own thing. So here we are on this cruise, and we're headed to Alaska. I am a 3rd generation, like I told you earlier, and I love sharing stories about Alaska. So we'll start with Southeast, all of Southeast. To begin with, of course, was Indian territory way back when, from thousands and thousands of years ago. We have the Haida, H-A-I-D-A Indians. We have the Tlingit, which is T-L-I-N-G-I-T, Tlingit, and the Simeon, it's T-S-I-M-S-H-I-A-M, Simeon pronouncing. They've been there for eons with their fishing and their hunting and gathering. We actually have discovered in Alaska, and a lot of people don't know, we have petroglyphs in Southeast Alaska. Now in Alaska, these consist of carved rocks, and they've been found at the head of streams. And the only thing that people have really come up with that makes any sense is that these are used to bring good spirits so the fishing comes back. And so they would carve their rocks, put them at the head of fishing streams so the salmon would continue to come back and nourish the people. So that's kind of interesting. They're Southeast Alaska as well as Kodiak, they have been found. Well, Juneau is our first stop, so that's where we're going to begin sort of with the Caucasian influx. When Alaska became part of the United States in 1867, the ceremony was held in Sitka, which we won't be going to, but it's a pretty cool place too. That's when a lot of Americans started heading north, a lot of adventurers, explorers, people thinking that there might be gold up in this region. And one of those people who lived in Sitka at the time, or came to Sitka, his name was George Pilz, P-I-L-Z. He was an engineer who really believed that he would find his fortune in gold somewhere in Southeast Alaska. And an Indian chief by the name of Cowie had told him that he had discovered something that looked like a big deposit of gold in an area called Silver Basin near Juneau, Silver Bow Basin. So George contacted 2 prospectors who he thought could go with the Indian chief and kind of look around and maybe find some gold for him. Well, these were two very reluctant prospectors. And they ended up getting quite drunk quite often and used up all the money that this engineer had given them to go in search of gold, and ended up going back to Sitka. So Pilz got his money together again and sent these guys out, and he said, you had better go and find that gold for me, or there's going to be heck to pay. I mean, big brouhaha. And off they went again, and this Indian chief actually had to drag these two prospectors, whose names were Richard Harris and Joe Juneau, to Silver Basin, and that's where they found the gold deposits. And pretty soon, that was in 1880, the discovery of gold in the Juneau area just boomed, and mines were developed, big stamp mines, and you had placer mines, and just mining just went nuts in Juneau. Well, they named the place Harrisburg, and that was going to be the name for this settlement, until Joe Juneau started plying many of the prospectors up there with more alcohol, hooch. They call it H-O-O-T-C-H, hooch in Alaska, and got them good and drunk, and then had everyone vote on what they wanted to call this new settlement. And that's the way Juneau came about, was because of his bribery ways. Juneau is a beautiful, picturesque place. I don't know what tours you're going to be taking there, but if you get a chance to go to the Mendenhall Glacier, it is absolutely gorgeous. As a child, I used to climb all over it. We would do church groups out there as kids and do picnics and swim. I could learn to swim in glacier water. And the Mendenhall Glacier itself, although it's receded from the time that I was growing up, it still is quite the sight to see, and especially if you haven't seen a glacier before. The calving is incredible, and remember, if you do see a glacier calve, the blue behind it, that pristine virgin blue color you see, that was the color of my father's eyes. They were absolutely gorgeous, and it always reminds me of that when I see a glacier calf. So I grew up in Juneau. One of the stories that I will relay to you, that if you're in downtown Juneau, you might want to stop and see the Red Dog Saloon. It is probably the oldest tourist attraction in Juneau. And the story behind that I will share with you, that is in the second book, which my books all cover a different era of Alaska history. The first one up to and including the Klondike, and we'll come back to it when we talk about Skagway. And this one is the Law and Order years. Wyatt Earp. Has everybody heard of Wyatt Earp? Famous lawman way back when? He decided that he was going to come to Juneau and go gold mining and make a huge fortune, and this is in 1901. Well, a letter that was found in the basement archives of the courtroom in Juneau several years ago told the rest of the story, and why he ended up in Nome and not in Juneau. The deputy marshal of Juneau heard that Wyatt Earp was on the steamship coming into town, and he didn't want him in his town. He thought Wyatt Earp was a desperado. So he got a posse together, and they met the ship. And the deputy marshal took Wyatt Earp's gun away from him and said, when this ship sails, you best be on it. Well, Wyatt went out partying, and he went to several establishments in Juneau, and I'm guessing the Red Dog was one of them. But as the story goes, he did not get out of his drinking establishments until the boat was leaving at 5 a.m. and the marshal's office was not yet open. So his gun was still in the marshal's office. And I believe they had it on display in the Red Dog Saloon for many years, and it may still be in the Red Dog. I know there's a picture of it in the Red Dog. And so that is one place my husband and I are going as soon as we hit Juneau, is to see, is it the real gun or just the picture that's there, and try to locate where the real gun is. So that, like, the rest of the story, like Paul Harvey used to say. So Juneau itself is a picturesque town. It's very hilly, kind of like Seattle and San Francisco. We lived on 3rd Street, and if you went up to 9th Street in the wintertime, they would block off a couple of the streets coming down so we kids could haul our cardboard boxes to the top and slide all the way down without being hit by cars. It was kind of fun. So you could also go, it's kind of a walk, but I did it as a kid, so it's not so bad as an adult, I wouldn't think, to see our governor's mansion, which is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. It was like a small White House to us with the pillars and everything. So that's kind of a neat thing to do too, and it won't cost you any money, just some leg work if you don't want to take a tour. The town of itself in Juneau, I'm sure they have tons of really cool gift shops, things where you can buy Alaska native art, fun stuff, tourist-y stuff, I'm sure too, because every little town has them. So Juneau got to be our capital after Sitka. That was at the turn of the century, and is our capital today. It's a very hard place to get in and out of because the mountains are all around there. And so airplanes coming in really have to be careful of the weather and the landing conditions with the airport being where it is. So that's about it for Juneau at this point. I don't know, we're going to be there from 2 until midnight or something like that. So I'm not sure how much time you're going to have to really explore, but if you have a chance to take a shuttle downtown and walk around, it's well worth it. It's just a very quaint old town.